Zane at the moment is not great, to say the least. If you look anywhere in the Ninjago fandom, the overwhelming majority of people will tell you that he's been flanderized beyond belief, being nothing more than his robotic traits. If you don't agree with this notion, that's completely fine, but the fact of the matter is that it's the opinion of the overwhelming majority of fans, and it's one that I agree with. The one thing that I don't agree with, though, is when people say the problems for Zane arose. Most Ninjago fans would say the problems arose around Season 5, during the revival era. However, I'm of the opinion that the first crack in Zane's character, and the start of his downfall, was in the 7th episode of the show, TikTok. Before I get into why, I want to do a deep dive into Zane's character, and who he was until this point. Zane is introduced to us in the very first episode of the show, and from immediate impressions we can gauge that there's something different about him. He doesn't exactly pick up on social cues, he doesn't exactly understand expressions, and is much more logical in his thought process. On top of this, he doesn't display the same range of emotions that the other ninjas seem to, and when he does show those emotions, they're quite often inappropriate and aren't exactly conventional or socially acceptable reactions to the situation, tying back to him failing to pick up on social cues. On top of this, Zane was incredibly spiritually in tune with the world, often showing that he has some sort of sixth sense, which is incredibly cool in my opinion, and genuinely one of my favourite aspects of his character. This sixth sense included Zane having visions about what could happen, guiding him through the world, but also just him having a general feeling of what to do and where to go. Like when he follows the Falcon on a whim and it leads him to Lloyd's treehouse, or it leading him to his old home, Dr. Julian's lab. When Zane does follow the Falcon to Dr. Julian's lab, he finds his own schematics revealing that he's a robot, and in my opinion, this is the single moment that doomed Zane as a character and is the root of all of his problems in modern Ninjago. Throughout these first episodes, Zane is very much built up as someone who was different from everyone else, and I very much interpret this as an autism allegory. Him not always picking up on social cues and having reactions that aren't befitting of the situation are definitely something that I, an autistic man, can heavily relate to. I remember doing a full Ninjago rewatch a few years back, and it really felt like I was getting so invested in Zane all over again, and when the robot reveal happened, it felt like I was ripped back to reality, and I just felt kinda empty. Character stuff aside, Zane being a robot just isn't something that's fulfilling to me at all. For example, him not being the funniest guy and not understanding jokes is boiled down to him not having his humour switch activated, and that's so lame in my opinion. Zane in the first few episodes was absolutely an autistic icon and someone who I could genuinely relate to and feel for. And feeling for him isn't something that stopped there, because for a time he had some pretty stories to tell, but lost that huge relatability factor through him being a robot to me. Genuinely, it's the worst move that they could have made for his character, and I think having your autism allegory be a robot is such a terrible move and something that if any future piece of media does, instantly turns me off of it, because it's a horrible move and I think it's borderline a bit ableist. Putting that aside, I still think the actual episode is really well done, and the scene where Zane does get his memories back is still one of the best scenes that the show has to offer. It's such an emotional rollercoaster to see where he came from and see that ripped away from him in an instant. Overall, TikTok is still a fantastic episode, and that isn't something I'll deny, but something about it, along with all of Zane's future stories, feels very dull due to the fact that he's a robot, and the fact that he was flanderized beyond belief in modern Ninjago because of that trait, because he doesn't feel like an autistic allegory anymore, just a robot character, and it's so sad to see the path he's gone down. The next few seasons were pretty alright for Zane until we get to season 4. Now obviously the story that they told for Zane here is overall pretty solid, but it introduces his titanium shell. The problem with this is that it really externalizes what was very much internal for Zane. By having him be outwardly represented through a titanium shell, it was only a matter of time before his humanity within was squashed by being nothing more than a robot. They briefly did try and mitigate this issue by having Zane use a cloaking device during the Oni trilogy, which many refer to as Flesh Zane, but this eventually came to an end and we were back to his old titanium shell. The fear of Zane becoming nothing more than his shell did eventually come to pass, as over time we saw his humanity slowly erode away in favour of him being nothing more than the robot of the team, losing all of his personality traits that made him feel so special in his early appearances. Nowadays, Zane doesn't have much, if anything, going for him. His spiritual side, completely gone. The last time this side of Zane was shown was during season 11, and it didn't really provide anything of worth to his character. It simply reduced him to a future seer, and in the end it didn't contribute much to his personality or the plot of the season. In terms of Zane being an autism allegory, such as failing to pick up on social cues and having out-of-pocket reactions, is largely gone. It's something that does appear occasionally, but it isn't as charming as it used to be, due to the fact that it doesn't come from him being an autism allegory, just the robot of the group that doesn't pick up on the regular stuff other people do. His more logical and structured outlook on life is also there, but it's so buried under being a walking calculator that it doesn't feel real or realistic anymore. Whereas the logical thinking he once had could be assimilated with that of an autistic person, and just a person in general, now feels like it's there because he's a walking and talking computer that doesn't contribute much to the group personality-wise. As I imagine you can all tell, I really do not like how Zane has been written as of late, and believe that the root cause is his reveal to be a robot in Season 1. I think it's just a horrible move for his character and it's permanently damaged him, and I don't think it's something that the writers will ever fix. I think it's kind of baffling how early they were able to fumble Zane, because how do you mess up a character so early into your show? Like, how is that possible, man? It's genuinely beyond me. Now, as we all know, the upcoming Ninjago season, Dragon's Rising Season 3, is supposed to give Zane a larger amount of focus and fix some of the problems with his character. While I really hope it does fix the problems present in his character, I don't have a lot of hope or faith that it will. While Doc Wyatt has said on Twitter that he acknowledges the flaws with Zane's character, that doesn't exactly give me all too much hope. The character that Zane was originally is so buried under years of Flanderization and bad writing that I just don't think this season is going to be a miracle fix for him. For this season to be considered a quote-unquote good Zane story and season, the writing quality for him has to be at least on par with that of Season 8, because all things considered that was a pretty solid season for Zane being characterized well, but he also needs to have some development because he's been static for 8 years now, and that is just the bare minimum for me to consider Dragon's Rising to have Zane sort of well written. As much as I love Dragon's Rising, and as much as I want to love Zane, and as much as I adore what Doc Wyatt and Kevin Burke have done with the world and characters of Ninjago, I unfortunately just don't have too much faith in the idea that Zane will be fixed next season. If they were going to write Zane in a compelling manner, they would have done so already, and I fear that there's no saving the character that Zane has become. But hey, if he wants to take his shirt off for Season 3, look, I'm all for it. All I'm saying is that I am all for it.
When you feel tired, look at yourself.